Welcome back to Ronnie's Rancid Reviews. This is Ronnie on the scene at Grant Park Cinema.
Hey, I'm Zach Kreger. I'm the director of Barbarian and the new horror movie Weapon.
Ranking the top 5 funniest moments in Weapons.
What did you think of Weapons?
I think it was a really good movie, honestly.
I never understood that.
Theater chuckling.
What was your favorite?
Weapon debuted at 100% on.
We were talking about that earlier.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's fine. Like, I enjoyed it. I had a good time.
Theater chuckling. Theater chuckling. Theater chuckling. Theater chuckling.
This is another movie episode. If you don't follow modern movie news, you might not know about the latest big cinematic gem, being Zach Kreger's second venture into horror, Weapons. It's getting a ton of buzz. I believe it premiered at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. But does it live up to the hype? Spoiler, it does. It absolutely does. But first, I want to talk about his previous film, Barbarian, from 2022.
Critics and audiences are screaming. Barbarian.
This is a movie that follows Tess, who finds herself in a predicament as she's booked an Airbnb that some other guy is staying at, in seemingly a technical mistake with the homeowner's planning. They decide to both crash there, but what follows is a lot more complicated than simply an awkward social situation, where they discover strange things about this Airbnb, such as secret doors, tunnel systems, and various disturbing findings hidden in those tunnels. And just to let you know, I will be spoiling both Barbarian and Weapons throughout these reviews. So beware. Barbarian is really great. Thank God Weapons got me to rewatch this because it deserves the bump in score. I initially gave this movie a 7 out of 10 when I first watched it, but it's rise to a new score of 8 out of 10. Speaking of score, I guess I'll start with the audio. This movie sounds great. The score was super well done, a mix between chanting choirs of screams, booming synth lines, and echoing twists that sound like scraping deep in a basement. It's truly an effective combo. The opening few shots were those choirs of horror I mentioned slowly creeping up in the score as our lead Tess pulls up to the new house of doom, before going silent as we enter through the passenger window. It symbolizes the environment perfectly. Speaking of cool shots through windows, this movie also looks great. In that same opening, we get an incredible shot of Tess stepping through the door straight into the title card. There's really striking visuals all throughout this film, particularly the way they shoot the various underground scenes and the way they contrast the visuals between instances of different characters in different times interacting with a shared environment. This is a big theme I've noticed with Zach Kreger's filmmaking. Needless to say, the cinematography from Zach Cooperstein was stellar, and considering how great Weapons looks, it's clear that Kreger has a lot of control over his stories and how they play out visually. And also, this movie has great practical gore and set design. It's just very well made. The story is a bit more complicated, and I actually got it this time around. To me, this is a story about roles. It really started clicking with me about 2/3 through the movie, with the help of recalling earlier scenes. One of the first act conversations that Tess had with Keith really stuck out once I started piecing the themes together.
There's always going to be people that project, some kind of dynamic onto us that serves them. It's up to us if we want to play ball or not.
Like I said, I saw this as a story about roles, and particularly how men play God in day-to-day life, with how some men see women as dolls to play house with and manipulate and conform these traditional dynamics onto. Whether it's a damsel in distress, a crazy lady who isn't making any sense, a daughter in need of protection, or a mother meant to care for that daughter. The horror really comes from that foreboding feeling of being trapped in a role, or just being a domino in a long chain or cycle. And moreover, something that continues in Weapons is how men are allowed to do these acts, and this idea of common casual apathy in everyday life, and how disconnected we've become. And I'll touch more on that later. So that's what stood out to me, this intentional or subconscious trapping of especially women into roles, and that sort of objectification and dismissal. At least that's what I thought.
Twisted. Shocking. And delightfully unhinged.
In conclusion, this movie sounds great, looks great, and has a very rich subtext. Now for a few negatives. There is a fair share of dumb character decisions. When Tess first discovers the lair, she has a comic relief nope moment, like she's decided to turn back, but then she still goes in there. There's a moment where Justin Long's character AJ falls down while running away from the creature in the cave, and his flashlight starts flickering as he's on the ground, and we see a shot cutting between pitch black and the monster getting closer and closer before she's right in front of him. It's a neat shot, don't get me wrong, but it's insane how close he lets her get before finally trying to run. There's a moment where Tess is escaping through the door and she's bashing it, and she tries like twice and then gives up to try the window. Like 2 hits, that's all you got in a life-threatening situation. It's not like a steel door. There's a few other examples, but it just feels like characters don't try that hard and make dumb decisions when it's needed for the plot. It's a little unnatural. It was only a few moments, but the character writing in those scenes kind of brought this down from an 8.5 or 9 to an 8. One last point before I wrap up the review. I hinted at this earlier, but I was really struck by the theme of recontextualizing. I really caught on to it after seeing Weapons. Zack definitely has a recurring cinematic idea he likes to explore, which is returning back to a location or scene or whatever through a new lens, or a new character, or a new time of day. We get this here with the repeated recontextualizing of the Airbnb. We first see it on a dark, stormy night, but we still don't see its surrounding houses, and most of the horror comes from entering this house itself. We then see it in the morning when Tess wakes up, and we see that it's surrounded by a terrible, decrepit, and worn-down neighborhood, which becomes a whole new source of horror. We then return to it again when AJ travels to the house to liquidate his property, and then out of nowhere, the house that has been only shown in these suspenseful, horror-filled scenes in Act 1 has now been turned into a source of great comedy, as AJ fumbles his way around with a tape measure to squeeze out every square inch of property money. Finally, we see a decade before, just as Detroit is becoming what it became, as everything in the film is recontextualized and we get a full backstory of the house. It's really incredible how much mileage this stinky old house gets. It's really neat, and again, this movie is an 8 out of 10.
Weapons is the best horror movie of the year.
It's unrelenting. It's completely over the top. One of my new favorite movies.
Are you watching?
Now on to the reason I'm talking about Barbarian in the first place, and the real star of this episode, Weapons. Weapons is a film that follows the very intriguing premise of 17 children, all students of the same class, suddenly, at 2:17, leaving their homes, running off, and disappearing into the darkness of the night. We then follow 6 characters caught up in this mystery as they interact and bump heads with each other, including the teacher of that class, a concerned parent, a cop, a drug addict, the principal of that school, and the only student who didn't disappear.
Matthew, where are you?
A lot of people die in this story. In a lot of really weird ways.
Weapons, rated R.
I'd like to start my review where I started this experience, the theater. This is the first movie this year that I've now seen twice, scratch that 3 times in theaters, and I'm very glad I did. This movie is so rewarding in many ways, and one of those ways is being around other people's reactions. This movie has such a versatile tone where some scenes will make people laugh, some will make people scream, and those reactions can be switched around in certain scenes depending on the audience. And I had 3 quite different crowds. Their first viewing at 4 p.m. was great. People reacted as expected during most scenes, but not as strongly as some would. It was a really great crowd for my first watch to just soak in the movie without distractions, just fully locked in. My second crowd was different. Somehow the audience at 1 p.m. was so much more emotive. There were some real characters. There was a lineup of teens in the row ahead of me who were clearly really into it, and there were some audible shrieks and yelps during certain jump scares. There was this one guy, he was my favorite audience member. He would whisper Jesus Christ loudly after every disturbing scene, and as the movie was rearing to a close and more stuff was happening, there would be a Jesus Christ from that guy like every few minutes, and then he explained, "That was fucked up," once the credits rolled. Very passionate fellow. This crowd was really perfect for a second viewing, and I would definitely recommend checking this out in theaters more than once if you can. One thing that wasn't great about the second viewing is that every time I go to the theaters, if I decide to get snacks, I always get peanut butter M&Ms, trust me, they're great, and a medium Fanta. It's clear that the soda machine has a varying quality throughout the day, and I think they put less flavor during early and late hours to save money, and my Fanta on the second viewing was pretty flavorless. Add on to that, for a little context, I never go to the bathroom during movies, and I rarely ever need to, but somehow I messed up with my bathroom cycle for that day, and my moment where I needed to pee landed right in the middle of the movie. So not only was the drink bad, but it had the gall to make me have to pee. On my third viewing, I opted for no drink, but a bag of those M&Ms. This viewing was definitely the one that had the most barricades. It's become obvious that the people working at these theaters are much more chill during the 1 p.m., 4 p.m. kind of hours, because this 9 p.m. screen time was a little harder. Apparently, this movie is 18A. I watched this movie twice in theaters before, and only now, when I have 2 friends with me, which means more pressure, am I informed that we actually can't watch the movie if we have no adults present. Thankfully, my dad, who just dropped us off, was interested, so he tagged along and we were able to get in. But there were still issues. There was one guy who was talking for like a quarter of the movie, which I was worried on would go for the whole movie. He left at some point. I accidentally bought mega M&Ms, so there were fewer and they ran out quicker. And I left my water bottle at the theater at the counter, and there were moments of loud food crunching behind me, but once I finally settled in and the distractions ceased, it became another great viewing. My first watch was really great, just hearing the movie out without any distractions. The second viewing was really cementing my feelings and developing my analysis, and my third viewing was a chance to look at the movie on a more technical side, knowing all the behind the scenes stuff and looking for little details that you wouldn't notice at first. I also got to hear a new crowd reaction who seemed the most susceptible to the comedy aspects, and I got to hear my friends' thoughts on the movie. Speaking of thoughts, isn't this a review show? On to the actual review. I'm now going to get into spoilers and stuff, so if you haven't seen Weapons, watch it now. Or whenever you can, because I don't want to spoil this for you. It's a great movie. Are you gone? Did you watch it? Good. Let's begin.
Those kids walked out of those homes, no one pulled them out.
And do you know why?
I mentioned in my review of Barbarian that Zach Cregger clearly likes to put things we're familiar with from earlier scenes into a new context or new light. Weapons takes that to a whole new level. This movie is split into 6 chapters following a different character in each. And the cool thing about that structure is that those 6 characters interact a ton, and we get to see previous scenes from a new character's eyes and a whole new type of cinematography. So when I say this movie is really rewarding, this is mainly what I mean. The movie is perfect on multiple viewings because you notice every small detail that's going to be paid off later, and exactly why it's there. It's brilliant. And when I say whole new technique of cinematography, I really mean it. You'll sometimes see a character or event pop up seemingly out of nowhere, and then once we see that same scene through another character's eyes, it'll carry a whole new purpose and a whole new weight. And that weight is often felt because a detail that was previously blurry is now in shot in full focus with so much more cinematic value and suspense. There's a specific shot of a drug addict character being chased by a cop, and through the cop's perspective, it's just in the background, part of a different moment. And then cutting to the addict's perspective, it's one of the most memorable shots in the whole movie, with a bellowing echo as he drops a wrench and a suspenseful Dutch angle, along with some booming score music. So not only does this movie look great, it's consistently purposeful and smart with how everything is demonstrated visually.
Where can I find something awful that isn't like startling, but is just arresting? You know, like you could look at the image with the sound off, you could freeze frame it, and the more you look at it, the worse it would get. This
leads me directly to my next point, which is the music. Another aspect that changes style as we go through each chapter. The general score is great. The first several chapters, you don't really think about the score. But once we get into James's chapter, the drug addict, I really started to listen. He's one of the more unique characters, and that's reflected in the shift from very well done but subtle suspenseful compositions to this jittery metallic sounding sonic profile during James's scenes, especially during moments where he's clearly on some serious drugs. The music then shifts again during the last chapter following Alex. This is the chapter where we really find out exactly what's going on, and the music shifts accordingly. The music becomes more foreboding and dizzying, the type of compositions that carry so much emotional weight and confusion. It's really brilliant, and Zach Cregger clearly has an eye for music, and not only for the original score, but the few soundtrack choices that end up in his films, as opposed to the perfect needle drop of Be My Baby by the Ronettes at the very end of Barbarian. His latest works waste no time to play Beware of Darkness by George Harrison at the very start of the movie, just as we're first seeing the children running away from home. This song choice absolutely gave me goosebumps, and it fits so perfectly. Be My Baby was amazing to close out Barbarian, although you could argue it's a bit obvious, but to pull out Beware of Darkness, in the context of George's body of work, a fairly obscure pick, and one of his best, just blew me away. One of my favorite scenes in the whole movie and one of the best needle drops in years.
Watch out now, take up your word for swingers.
All of that I just mentioned had already pretty much clicked for me on my first watch, although I thought of more detailed ways to explain it on my second watch. But really why I watched it again was to fully piece together the story and what Krager is trying to say here, and I'm happy to inform that I pieced it together just as I was hoping. After watching Barbarian, I'm really starting to figure out what makes this director tick. I feel as though he's very passionate about empathy and humanity. That's kind of what his body of work is saying to me, at least. To me, Weapons is a film about how we, as a people, will so easily use each other and disregard compassion and step over boundaries. The simplified version of this theme being parasites, a motif in this story. Marcus, the principal, is watching a nature doc about parasites and fungus during his chapter, and we see Justine, the teacher, talking about parasites in class during the last chapter. Not only does the order of events and how we jump from each person feel incredibly natural, but also the themes are expanded upon through the eyes of each person just as naturally. I'm now getting into serious spoiler territory, like going through every plot point, so be warned. We start off with Justine, who has one of the purest intentions of any characters. She has such a passion and care for her students, but she still crosses many morally gray boundaries in an attempt to help her students. Some very reasonable things like hugging a crying student, or driving a student home who missed the bus, and then progressing to more iffy territories like staking out houses, peeping through windows, and following people home to try and bring these kids to justice.
The thing that I always found interesting with her is that her intention was very pure, but the execution was sometimes a little, like, up in the air.
Staking out houses and intruding on people's lives is a continuing pattern throughout, including the next chapter where we follow Archer, the parent of one of these missing kids. He's also a very real and very flawed man. He's a very masculine, hard exterior, rough and tumble kind of guy. We learn through context clues that he neglected to tell his son he loves him, and we can infer that his reserved approach on parenting really affected his son, and he's shown to be the school bully. This reflects the strong theme of this sort of dichotomy or disconnect between the parents and kids of today, and how neglecting to understand that disconnect could lead to harmful influences. Archer pushes many boundaries, harassing Justine and painting her car to say witch on it, because he believes, as many of the townspeople do, she has something to do with these disappearances. He also barges into another parent's life to get footage from their security cameras because he has his own personal investigation. But just like Justine, all of this is in service of finding these kids, and he clearly has a very big heart.
He starts to get broken, and I love characters like that come across as these kind of staunch ideas of what a man should be, and they get slapped in the face and, ultimately end up just human.
Things plunge further into these themes where we follow Paul, the cop. When we meet him in Justine's chapter, he's presented as the voice of reason, the guy who has his life together. But once we really see who he is, a different picture is painted. He scolded Justine about her drinking problems, yet he drinks and drives on the job. He cheats on his wife, he's a very bad cop who punches James the junkie illegally, and then panics and tries to hide the dashcam footage. He's somewhat sympathetic, but he's the first character who you really see the apathy of, through how he uses people and disregards people.
It's really about somebody who's somewhat newly sober and waking up in a life that he's not happy in and navigating what that feels like and frustrated.
Next is James, who I just mentioned, the one who got punched in the last chapter. He's also a sympathetic character in many ways, but he's also the most parasitic of any of them, so far. He steals from little kids' backpacks, he breaks into homes, he begs people in his life for money with the most likely false promise that he'll get a job. We actually first see him during Justine's chapter, where he asks her for money, and at first it seems like just a random interaction. But like I said, this movie is very rewarding on second watches. This comes to a head when he breaks into Alex's house, where we get the reveal that all 17 of these missing children are standing still like robots in the basement of young Alex's home. James manages to escape, but only thinks to contact the police while he's at a pawn shop, selling items that he stole from the house, and he sees a sign for a $50,000 reward for information on the missing kids. He only thinks to try and save those young children once he realizes he can make money from it. Again, that apathy, that using people for your own gain, that parasitic nature.
And then Austin also was like, I knew I needed Austin. He was the only one, so I was gonna shoot this a year before I ended up shooting it. And my schedules got messed up with the strikes and everything, and he was the only actor from my first cast that hung tough with me.
The penultimate chapter is following Marcus, the principal, who is easily the most well-rounded character of them all, who in a tragic twist of fate is also the character who probably suffers the most. His character is where we meet the main villain, who's been pulling all the strings the whole time, Gladys. The way she works is that she can take someone's personal belongings, attach it to a branch from her magical tree plant, and attach someone else's hair to the same branch and snap it. This will cause the first person to attack the second person and hunt them down like a heat-seeking missile. Like, a weapon. She shows off this trick when she forces Marcus to murder his own husband, and then hunt down Justine, where he is eventually hit by a car.
He's the principal of the school, and he's there to hold things down, and he's very much by the book, but yet also what then happens to him. There's almost like two versions of playing this character.
This chapter doesn't continue the pattern of characters we follow being more and more apathetic, but we do get shown the most depraved and apathetic act yet, at the hands of Gladys. She then becomes the main star of the last chapter following Alex. Spoiler alert, Gladys is one of my new all-time favorite horror villains, helped in no small part to Amy Madigan's scene-stealing and brilliant performance. Gladys is Alex's aunt, and soon after moving in, she puppets Alex's parents to do her bidding using her witch powers. She explains to Alex that she's sick and thought that his parents, his mind control parents, would help her get better, but she now needs more. And this is where she asks Alex to bring her items from her classmates' houses to her so she could perform her branch magic on them. Gladys is really the character whose intentions I didn't understand for the longest, but I think I finally get it. To me, she represents the highest form of this movie's theme. She's a user and manipulator in the most basic sense. She uses Alex to do her bidding, but also in a much stranger sense. She's quite literally a parasite. It seems to me like she can only sustain her life through these people that she controls and keeps close to her. Like she is literally feeding off this town and infecting it with this growing apathy and lack of humanity throughout the movie. Like she derives her power from the souls of her powerless victims. We even see her wilted hair start growing back near the end, implying that she's, stealing the life force of these kids. Which makes sense with how at the end of the movie we see all these kids return to their families, but they seem a lot less exciteful and like Gladys has truly drained them. I didn't get it at first, but I believe the reason she goes after Marcus in the first place was to use him to get rid of anyone who's trying to investigate this house of horrors. The police are clearly shown to not know what the hell they're doing, but the characters we follow have their own investigations that are actually coming close to answers, so she uses her powers to simply stop them from finding these helpless children that she is sucking the life force from. That's my vision of what happened.
And a lot of this is really about that addiction. The final chapter with the kid and his parents is really about an alcoholic family.
This all concludes in one of the best endings of the year. At this point in the story, Gladys has Paul and James under her spell, and as Justine and Archer start getting really close to getting these kids, Gladys lures them in with mind-controlled Paul, where she then gets the two to attack them. During the ensuing chaos, as everyone is distracted, young Alex breaks into Gladys's magic room and weaponizes the children to hunt down Gladys, which of course turns into an absolutely bonkers chase scene, following a flailing and screaming Gladys running frantically from the gaggle of mind-controlled children, jumping through windows and destroying anything in their way to catch up to Gladys. And once they do, they tear her to pieces. And it's insane, and gross, and somehow really hilarious and satisfying.
Weapons ending brings things to an intense, disturbing, and darkly hilarious conclusion.
This movie rocks. Go watch it. It's worth it for the bonkers ending alone, but everything else in the movie is equally interesting and well constructed. It's everything shining about Barbarian, minus the fat, minus the sort of contrived character actions.
I think that Weapons is a much more refined version of something that he had his finger on the pulse of with Barbarian.
The characters just felt so real. It's also a film that clearly has so much heart. Watching the interviews and behind-the-scenes videos, it's clear that everyone put their whole soul into this movie. Every single performance was incredible and out of this world, and you could just feel that this movie is one that was made out of a real place and made out of a real passion for telling these stories. I love this movie a lot.
It takes bigger risks. It has bigger set pieces. way more characters to kind of track throughout, and it has a bigger mystery at the heart of it. So I don't know, it just feels like an escalation in almost every way.
I guess since I've spent the whole review gushing, I might as well bring up what I guess you could call criticisms, which are only nitpicks I noticed on a third watch, and they didn't really bother me or distract me, more just like, hey, I guess one could be bothered by that. There's some, I wouldn't say egregious, but quite noticeable product placement, particularly in a shot where we follow a hand placing a Coke can on a table as it's centered and focused in the frame. They also mention Coke later on. I assume they sponsored this movie in a big way. Anyways, both those instances didn't stick out to me initially, because they both had a very specific purpose, story-wise and shot-wise, other than being a Coke ad. There were also technically plot holes, if you want to call it that, in the sense that there were one or two moments where a character said a slightly different thing when shown in different perspectives, but it honestly just felt more like a sort of unreliable narrator / perspective switch sort of thing, and it's more of a fun fact to notice on later viewings than it is an actual issue. There's also one single moment on a second watch that was giving me Barbarian character choice flashbacks, which was Justine trying to open the door while running from weaponized Marcus, and she just stands there after it doesn't open, but it felt more like a realistic flight or fight moment, and it didn't really distract me. So those are my quote-unquote criticisms. I loved literally everything about this movie, so I was reaching.
There are major plot holes all over this, like the cop dragging the guy in, and then the cop car's there all day, and so the little kid doesn't see the cop car until he comes home from school. It's like, how's that possible? It doesn't work. It doesn't add up. And at a certain point, you have to just be like, that's okay.
So to solidify my thoughts, this is a very well-crafted, well-directed story that spoke to me about this theme of parasites, this commentary on apathy, and the failure to recognize a communal disconnection that can lead to corruption and bad actors who take advantage of that apathy. Now that's my review. That's my interpretation. One thing I've been grappling with for a bit after watching and digesting this movie is the overarching reaction to this, specifically how people are analyzing it. I laid out my view of the themes as best as I could, and I think I made it clear that it's my view. In a movie that takes you through so many fresh eyes, I think it's important to point out that everyone has their own view of art. One thing I've learned through watching interviews is that Zach is a big David Lynch fan.
What the hell?
And especially of his creative process, and I've picked up on that inspiration in how he talks about his writing process. He doesn't really talk about what he wants the story to be, what his vision is. He really talks about the process like the art is the thing making the decisions. He's just the vessel it's speaking through. He specifically talks about what the story wants to be, and how these ideas will just naturally develop. And it seems like that approach isn't very popular in a wide audience. I've seen many interpretations of this film. There's a large group of people who think, quote-unquote, this movie is about nothing, and that's okay, which feels dismissive to me. But I think most people actually took something specific from this movie's themes, and I've been reading up on how people came to those conclusions and how this movie connected with different people. Of course I read those interpretations after coming up with my own. I didn't spoil my personal thinking process. But I found many of these interpretations very interesting and compelling. There's a large group of people who saw this explicitly as an allegory for school shootings. There's a group of people who saw this be about alcoholism or addiction. There's many people who saw this as a commentary on how the minds of today's youth are being shaped and taken advantage of. I read one really interesting and moving review by someone about how they think it's a film about sexual abuse. The point is, there's plenty of understandable reasons for any one of these interpretations, and they all even fit with the motif of parasites. The only problem is this attitude that one of these many ways to view the film is the correct answer. It feels like people are weaponizing certain things the director has said or certain visuals in the movie to try and be the most right, instead of respecting the flow of ideas and the beautiful subjectivity of art that can breed such colorful discussions. This movie has really got me thinking and got me really passionate about art, and it's got me more passionate than anything I've seen in years. And I salute Zach Greger for leaving so much room for passion and discussion, even if I disagree with the approach some people take to that. And for all those reasons and more, I'm going to give Weapons a fat 10 out of 10. And to prove how much I think this movie is full of life and passion, I've managed to get some interviews from people who've seen it, and you're about to hear those. This is Ronny on the scene at Grant Park Cinema. I'm here with my friend Nika. I'm here with my friend William. And I'm joined on the phone with Jay. And I'm here on the phone joined by Jen. And I'm joined with Levi on the phone. Levi, how's your day?
It's pretty good.
It's going great. It's awesome.
It's going all right. How about you?
It's going great. So, my first question. What did you think of Weapons? Whether you have a thematic analysis or any general thoughts on any aspect of the film, tell me, what was your experience with Weapons?
I thought it was an amazing horror movie.
I think it was a really good movie, honestly. A lot of, just a bunch of good artistic decisions and cinematic decisions were made, and it all was very coherent and it went together extremely well. I especially love the aspect of different perspectives. I think it's a very good way of storytelling and conveying the story and giving us more than just a single way to look at the story, giving us multiple emotions to feel, and etc.
Well, yeah, I won't get like too pretentious or anything. I just enjoyed it. I went in blind. I mean, it was marketed really well because it was like, what's this movie? Just these kids running away from home. I just thought it was a pretty. No, like I liked the whole formatting of it. I liked the different aspects, points of view from the different characters in the movie. I like the progression, and I won't do any spoilers. I'll just say I do like how some stuff was left a mystery too, because sometimes I think you need that in movies. You don't need to always spell things out. So no, just overall, it was a very good viewing experience, especially when you go in blind and know nothing about the movie. It was a very enjoyable film.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I like how, some things are just left up to imagination for you to, make your own theories or, make up your own world about the movie.
Okay, so I did not do my research, and I went into that thinking it was going to be scarier. But, to be honest, after watching it, it really gave me the vibes of, those prompts you're given in, English class, and then you're just supposed to write about that prompt.
Mm-hmm.
It gave, a short story vibe like that. That's how I felt after watching it, and it was enjoyable because not a lot of the movies I've watched lately have been like that.
Yeah. I could see that. It's the reaction is very polarizing because, there's a lot of people saying it's the scariest movie ever, and a lot of people saying it's not scary at all and it's more of a comedy.
Yeah,
so it's really interesting.
I felt it was more of a comedy than anything. I felt like it's not something that would give you nightmares, It's just something that, you kind of watch for fun.
Yeah.
I watched it in theaters about a week ago with some of my friends. You were there, and it was a pretty cool experience. At the start, I wasn't really enjoying it too much. I mean, it just seemed kind of, it didn't seem like a bad movie. It seemed well shot. It just wasn't my thing at the start. It just kind of seemed dull. But then once it, basically it swaps perspectives, and that's one of the main points of the movie that kind of, it gave me more insight on each character, and just made the tension greater, especially in moments when you didn't get to really see what the other characters were doing. Just was a cool way of telling the story. I liked it.
Absolutely. You haven't seen Barbarian, have you?
No, I haven't.
That's another movie where the perspective shifts a lot, and we see locations in different timelines and stuff like that. So I think Zach Krager, that's his favorite thing to do.
Oh yeah.
My next question is, do you have a favorite of the 6 chapters shown in the film, whether it's for the character focused on in that chapter or the story progression?
Was the guy's name James, the druggie?
Yes.
Okay, that guy was hilarious. That's definitely my favorite character by far. Yeah, he's got some really comical scenes in uncomical times, which I think really just makes the movie so much better. It really, because I am always on edge when I watch horror films, so it really helped lighten the mood and put me off edge, and I laughed out loud in the theater. It was great.
I would maybe agree with that. Austin Abrahams, the guy who played the druggie, this movie got recast because they had to do rescheduling, and he was actually the only cast member who stayed through all the recasting. So, and he had to remain that weight for a whole year, so it's pretty crazy.
I really liked the Archer one. I liked Archer's chapter because I think the idea of a dad looking for his son when he's just missing and the way he was so determined and stuff, just that was really cool. I think I love that one the most. Yeah.
Oh, geez. That is tricky. What would be my favorite chapter? I mean, I know this is kind of a cop-out. I don't think I have a favorite chapter. I think every single one just meshed together so well that I can't really think of a specific chapter. Like, it's a good slow burn, because the movie starts, you know, from one person's perspective and then another, and you get more and more and more of the story. So it's one of those things, I can't really give a specific answer to my favorite chapter. I just really like the progression and natural flow of the movie. I mean, going back to something I said with spoilers, I mean, I was reading online that there were some chapters that were left out. So again, not spoiling anything. And I think that was actually for a good choice on the director's and the writer's part, because yeah, it flowed very, very nice.
Yeah, fair enough. I've seen a lot of the interviews about Weapons. I haven't heard that about the chapters being left out, but that's it. That's interesting. Yeah.
I say the one where we're introduced to the grandma, like straightforwardly. I mean, like actual introduction to the aunt, not the grandma. Whoa.
Yeah.
So it would have been the principal's. I forgot his name.
Marcus.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that chapter too. He's one of the most innocent characters, and he ends up with like the worst fate.
Yeah, his head smashed and everything. Ew, I hated that scene. Oh my gosh. Oh, ew, yeah.
A lot of the perspectives are pretty great, and they're like really diverse and different from each other, and I think they're all pretty integral to the movie. But I'd say my favorite one, or not necessarily my favorite one, but it was pretty funny, and it was kind of just like a fun thing to watch. It was the perspective of James, the guy who's like, he's homeless and he's kind of just on his own. He's just doing his own thing, and he's just running from the cops all the time. I love the chase between him and the cop, and the fact that we got to see both their perspectives and what they were both thinking at the time. That was really cool. And I just like his character as a person. He's just kind of funny.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of people I know.
Does he? Yeah, that's one of my favorite chapters too. I really like the music in that chapter.
I liked it too.
My final question is, what would you rate this movie with an adjective, a sentence, or a number from 1 to 10?
It's definitely my favorite horror movie I've seen so far, but my experience is I've seen Terrifier 1 and 2, so the gore from that movie was not as high level as Terrifier, I'd say, but definitely like story, character, everything so much better. I gotta give it like at least a 10. Like that's probably my favorite movie in theaters so far.
I'd rate it a 9.5. I think it really like hit. I think it was like perfect pretty much. Just I haven't seen many other horror films, so because I'm not the best candidate, but I think out of all the ones that I've seen, it's probably the best one. But the 0.5 deduction is because of just I'm not that experienced in this. So, but regardless, I think it's a 9.5 or a 10.
Yeah, I mean, my rating systems of movies, like I give stuff like The Toxic Avenger a 5. So my rating systems don't mean much. But a 4, like a solid like 8 out of 10. Maybe even like a 9, like a 4.5 or like 9 out of 10. Yeah, so between an 8 and a 9. It was just a very enjoyable experience.
That's high praise. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Probably 6.8 out of 10. It was a pretty like decent movie. I don't think it's on like the top horror movies, but it was just like an interesting, fun watch. And it wasn't like it was enticing, and I wanted to keep watching it. After I got through the first like third of the movie, I got more interested into it. So I think 6.8 is solid.
Hey, I'll take it. What would you rate this movie with an adjective, a sentence, or a number from 1 to 10?
I'd say Play-Doh.
Play-Doh.
It reminded me of Play-Doh. I don't know how to describe it. Like, yeah, Play-Doh.
Okay.
If I could describe it, it'd be something like, it felt like a children made the narrative, but like someone actually like took it and then elaborated on it. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, I've heard it described as like a fairy tale.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that
and
makes
a lot
sense.
of like the flesh parts and everything, it just reminded me of Play-Doh. And like how like the parents were poking themselves with the forks, like that really just like the texture and everything, that just reminded me. I don't know, it just reminded me of Play-Doh. Like
I'll take it.
that's my descriptive.
All right, that's the interview. Thank you for your time.
Yes, that was nice.
As you've just heard, everybody has a different perspective on what happened in the movie or what chapter was most important to them, which reflects the shifting perspective throughout the movie. And each person who goes into the story comes out with a slightly different and infinitely special experience and connection to weapons. And I thank the movie gods for creating such a gift. I just spent so long writing this review and making this episode, and I still don't feel like I mentioned everything I want to about this movie. It's just a gold mine of thoughts. Zach Krager, please come on the show. You seem like a really cool guy, and I loved your movie Weapons. That's it for the episode. Check out Review Ronny on YouTube and Instagram for info and archives on the show. And before I let you listeners go, it's time for Ronnie's Joke of the Week. What would you call the director of Weapons if he had a bunch of spikes in his back and was a dinosaur? A Craigosaurus. See you next time on Ronnie's Recontextualizing Reviews.
Hey, Ronnie. Ronnie? Good reviews?
Fabulous reviews.
This is Ronnie. Make it good.
Suppose Ronnie could have been a reviewer. It's Ronnie, all right.
Ronnie? Reviews.
Fabulous reviews.
And this is the best review we got.
Get her chuckling.